Two dangerous storms are on the way, and they are threatening your Thanksgiving plans. These storms are gearing up to deliver significant snow events, a chance of strong tornadoes, and a surge of bone-chilling Arctic air. What makes this weather pattern so alarming is that every key ingredient is lining up at the same time. Two opposing air masses are set to collide multiple times, and each time we could see a very different outcome. From the risk of strong tornadoes today to snow accumulations as high as 24 inches right in time for Thanksgiving, the weather needs to be tracked very closely. Any change in the timing or location of our jet stream will have significant impacts on who sees severe weather, who gets heavy snow, and where the biggest disruptions develop during the busiest travel week of the year. So in this forecast, we are going to break down exactly how these two storms will unfold and what you need to know before hitting the road for this Thanksgiving. And we are going to begin by talking about our jet stream, as this will ultimately control our weather pattern over the next couple of weeks in the United States. And we are going to begin with what is happening today and tomorrow. We currently have a big storm system that is located in the Central Plains, and this is forecasted to bring the risk of significant severe weather, including the risk of tornadoes today and tomorrow, anywhere from Texas back into the Ohio Valley. So this is a big area that we're watching, and we'll talk more about that here in just a moment. Once we go into Tuesday, this storm system will make its way into the Ohio Valley, and then an Alberta Clipper is going to make its way out of Canada. That'll move into the northern plains on Tuesday. This is actually going to bring the risk of heavy snowfall across North Dakota, Minnesota, even parts of Wisconsin and the upper peninsula of Michigan as we go into Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So big snowfall event is upcoming here as we go into the middle of the work week. And then by the time we go into Thursday, which is Thanksgiving, we are going to have a huge dip in the jet stream all across the northern plains, down into Texas, even across the southeast. And this is going to usher in tons of colder air, and this will drop temperatures by as much as 20 to 30 degrees in some areas as we go into Thanksgiving and as well as Black Friday. Additionally, around this low pressure system, we'll have very strong winds coming out of the west. This is going to amplify our risk of lake effect snow. This does include areas in the upper peninsula of Michigan. It also includes Lake Erie, Lake Ontario, and a little bit of lake effect snow around Lake Michigan as well as in the forecast. And then by the weekend, this is where things get a lot more uncertain. However, we are forecasting a major storm system to be impacting the United States by around Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. This could bring significant severe weather. It could bring a big winter storm, but there is quite a bit of uncertainty on exactly what impacts it'll bring and exactly where those impacts will reside. But the big synoptic overview is that we are going to have troughing along the west coast during the first few days of December, and this should bring multiple big storms to the United States over the first couple of weeks of December in the United States. So get ready for an extremely active weather pattern to begin meteorological winter. Now, we have two big things we need to talk about in this forecast, one of which is going to be our temperature trend, and then the other one are all the big storms that are coming over the next 10 days that are going to bring severe weather, snow, and a lot of other problems. I want to begin by talking about our temperature trend, because this is going to set the stage of what is actually going to happen over the next 7 to 10 days. So right now we have mostly above average temperatures across most of the country, but that will change because by Wednesday and Thursday, we are going to get a pretty intense shot of cold air that is going to move across the Midwest, the northern plains, and the Ohio Valley. This pictured here is Wednesday morning, so this is the morning before Thanksgiving. Things are going to cool down rapidly across the Midwest, and then by Thursday, that cold air is going to grow in size, and that is going to literally drape all of the Midwest, all of the Ohio Valley, and the majority of the East Coast, where temperatures will be as low as 10 to 15 degrees below average. And then Friday and Saturday, that cold air is only going to continue to drape the entire East Coast. And then as we go into Saturday and Sunday, we will likely see another huge storm across the Midwest and the Southern Plains. This one will be larger than the storm that we're going to be dealing with over the next few days, just to put that in perspective. And this one is likely going to bring a lot more problems with a lot more snowfall and also severe weather, but it's also going to bring a lot colder weather as well as we go into Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. So overall, Thanksgiving might kind of be the happy medium. You're going to basically be sandwiched, though, between two storms, one of which is happening right before Thanksgiving and another huge storm that is happening right after Thanksgiving. And then we are likely going to proceed to see more big storms as we go into the first week of December. So the weather is about to get really crazy. Now let's talk more about these big storms that are coming to the United States over the next couple of weeks. And we'll begin with what is happening today and tomorrow. A big storm system will continue to move across the southern plains, the deep south, and the Ohio Valley today. This will bring the risk of significant severe weather for parts of Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Mississippi, with damaging winds, hail, and tornadoes on the table. We're going to go more in detail about this here in just a few minutes. And then as we go into early Tuesday, the storm will continue to push through the Ohio Valley. The two low pressure systems will merge into one across the Midwest, which means that we're going to see some snowfall across the northern plains in the upper Midwest. And then severe weather will continue on Tuesday across the Dixie Alley and the Ohio Valley, with an additional risk of damaging winds, some hail, and a couple of tornadoes. And then as we go into Wednesday, this storm system will move towards the East Coast. A lot of snow is going to fall across the upper peninsula of Michigan. We'll also see some snowfall across central Wisconsin. And then an atmospheric river event is going to start to pick up, where heavy rain and snow are going to drape the Pacific Northwest by Wednesday and Thursday. On Thanksgiving, most of the United States will be fairly quiet. The areas that will not, though, are going to be primarily around the Great Lakes, where significant lake effect snow will be ongoing throughout the daytime on Thursday, and then a big storm system is going to make its way into the Pacific Northwest. Otherwise, most of us will be pretty quiet. It's just going to be pretty chilly. We have that big cold blast that is going to be coming in on Tuesday, Wednesday. That's going to really cool things down across the Midwest, Ohio Valley, and then the Northeast. And then the energy that comes from this atmospheric river event back over in the Pacific Northwest will move over the Rockies on Friday and Saturday, and this is going to create our next big storm system, which right now is forecasted to come in sometime around Friday or Saturday. And this storm is expected to bring a ton of different problems. We just don't exactly know when or where they'll be happening. But one thing that is for certain is that we are going to see heavy snowfall somewhere, and most likely our biggest winter storm so far this winter. That'll likely impact parts of the Midwest, maybe even the Ohio Valley Saturday and Sunday. There will likely be some severe weather as well across the deep south, including areas like Texas and the Dixie Alley. So this will be something to watch for during the weekend. And then beyond this, that's where things get a lot more uncertain. The first few days of December could be very active, or we could have a big high pressure system build across the East Coast and also the Great Plains, which could limit activity for the first few days there of December. Now, this is a different story. If we look at the GFS model, it shows something completely different, which is even more significant than what I just showed you, which does show a multi-day big storm system developing all across the Great Plains in the Midwest around the 30th and 1st. And then as we go into around the 2nd and 3rd, so around Tuesday or Wednesday of next week, we'll potentially see another big storm system that could also bring heavy snowfall and ice to parts of the Midwest in the Ohio Valley. And then it shows another big storm forming around December 6th. So you can see there's two different scenarios here, basically, one of which is that we have one big storm and then we start to see just a couple of other small storms after that, or we see something like the GFS is showing where there's multiple big storms overlapping over a multi-day stretch. But no matter what happens, we are almost undoubtedly going to see at least one, if not two or three big storm systems next week, and that is all because of our synoptic weather pattern, which is really dominating when it comes to low pressure along the west coast of the United States. This generally favors a storm track that goes right across the central plains in the Midwest, which we're going to have two colliding air masses, which means that we'll have severe weather and heavy rain for most of the East Coast and the Southeast. And then on the other hand, we'll likely see some wintry weather across the central plains, the Midwest, and also the Ohio Valley. Now, these storms are going to bring a few different problems, one of which is the threat of snowfall, and this is how much snow we can expect just over the next few days. This is between now and Thanksgiving morning, and there will be a large swath of snow from southeastern North Dakota all the way through Minnesota and the upper peninsula of Michigan that will likely pick up around 6 to 12 inches of snowfall. So we're talking about the possibility of significant snow accumulation right before the big holiday. And then also back over in areas like the Great Lakes, this is an area that we are also expecting lake effect snow, and that'll really stack up Thursday and Friday across the upper peninsula of Michigan. And this is where things become more uncertain. By the upcoming weekend and also going into next week, so the first week of December, we will likely see more snowfall here across the Midwest and also areas in the northern plains, but we really don't know where that's going to happen or exactly how much snow is going to fall. European models show something very similar, by the way, at least for the next few days, showing basically the same areas seeing significant snowfall. And then as we go into the weekend and early next week, it does show a much more significant winter storm occurring across the Midwest and the Ohio Valley. So just notice again, there's a lot of model discrepancies right now as we go into this upcoming weekend and also going into next week. Things are going to change a lot on that upcoming winter storm. Let's get through this one that's happening before Thanksgiving, and then we'll talk more about what's happening after Thanksgiving. And then in terms of our snowfall across the Northeast, the majority of this will be on or just after Thanksgiving. We are talking about the possibility of upwards of 6 to 12 inches of snow, especially in southwestern New York and even northeastern Ohio near Cleveland, and also near Watertown, New York. We'll see some pretty significant snowfall accumulation. Our highest totals will probably be near 18 to 24 inches back over in extreme southwestern New York. Now let's talk more about the severe weather potential over the next few days, and we'll begin with with today, which is Monday, and we have a slight risk of severe weather in place from western Mississippi back into areas like Houston, Texas. The biggest concern for today will be the risk of damaging winds and also large to very large hail, which will definitely be a concern out of our initial supercells this afternoon. We could actually see a couple of storms produce hail up to the size of tennis balls, so make sure that you are protecting your vehicle. But one of the more notable concerns for today is that we have a 5% tornado risk in place, which is a bit more elevated. That goes from western Mississippi back into East Texas, where there is a possibility for a few tornadoes. I would not rule out a strong tornado or two today, but that is only going to happen if we have discrete supercells out in front of our line of thunderstorms. If that does not happen, it is going to be very difficult for any strong tornado threat to actually materialize. The Storm Prediction Center did mention in previous outlooks that a hatched area for tornadoes is possible, but there just is not enough confidence. I still think that is the case. There is just not enough confidence on strong tornadoes at this time. And then tomorrow, which is tossing trampolines on Tacos Tuesday, we have a marginal threat of severe weather in place from southeastern Kentucky back into the deep south and the lower Dixie Alley right along the Gulf Coast. It's a marginal risk. It's a low end day, but we are going to be watching for some damaging winds, maybe hail to the size of $50, and perhaps an isolated tornado or two. The tornado threat will be mainly during the very late morning and into the early to mid-afternoon hours across this region. Now let's talk more about the timing of severe weather for the next couple of days, beginning with today. A very intense line of thunderstorms is already rolling through Dallas-Fort Worth this morning, also going to be approaching Waco later this morning. By lunchtime, we'll be watching for this line of storms to weaken just a little bit, and then we'll be watching some discrete supercells to try to fire up by around noon, just out in front of that line of thunderstorms. I don't think there's going to have much success. I think the better chance for anything to stay discrete will probably be closer to sunset tonight. If that does not happen, we're at least talking about a line of thunderstorms that'll continue to produce damaging winds and a potential for a couple of tornadoes embedded in this line. By 8 to 9 o'clock, this line continues to push to the east across the Houston area, also moving towards central Louisiana, and then going into the overnight hours, the line will be falling apart as it moves into Mississippi, Louisiana, and also outside of Texas into the Gulf. And again, this is a very conditional threat today for tornadoes. I think it's going to really ride on any sort of discrete cells firing out in front of the line. If that does not happen, this tornado threat is going to be pretty minimal in my opinion. Keep in mind, there's a possibility of a live stream today, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel and click the bell icon so you're notified if we do go live. And then tomorrow, the threat of severe weather will be mostly during the late morning and afternoon hours. We'll have plenty of storms out there, stretching from southeastern Mississippi back into eastern Tennessee. This will be mainly a threat of wind and hail, but there could be a few of these storms that are spinning just enough to the point where we could see a few brief tornadoes. And then by the evening hours, these storms are going to be moving into central Georgia and also the Florida Panhandle, where they will be weakening. And as always, thank you all so much for watching today's forecast. If you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe down below. And we officially have a Black Friday sale going on at shopmaxvelocity.net. That is the top link in the description below. You can use code Black Friday to get $5 off any order of $50 or more. We have our Happy Holidays merch out, and as well as our Supercell collection and a ton of other awesome stuff. Make sure to check this out again at shopmaxvelocity.net. And I really recommend, if you're going to get anything, to make sure that you buy it before the end of November. That way you get it delivered before Christmas. Thank you guys all again so much for watching, and we'll see you all again in the next video or live stream.